One town, he's an farmer's insurance agent. You know, I mean,
yeah.
He does all kinds of stuff. He was with Pancho Villa in Mexico doing stuff. I mean, the stuff that Roy Davis was involved in is incredible. He's in Texas with the Stamps Quartet. I mean, how do you do this? I don't know how you do this, but I mean, he somehow pulled off. I mean, not just like 1 or 2 or 3 different lives. I mean, he's probably living 10 or 12 different lives, right? So, I mean, this man is a criminal genius. I mean, Roy Davis is a criminal genius.
And what's interesting, you know, when you look at all of those different things, those different lives that he lived, some of it was fiction. He would go to a town and he'd say, hey, I'm this, and he wasn't this, whatever it was. But in some cases, like he said he was an original member of the Stamps Quartet. I'm familiar with the Stamps Baxter Quartet. I actually have some CDs somewhere of the old records. But he was a member of this. Well, they believed it to the extent in California that he was the MC of what would be, you know, the California National Gospel Quartet convention. It was a big deal. But this is also interesting. I looked really long and hard last night trying to confirm it, but as he's burning his past bridges, he's first with the Baptist church till they kick him out. They realize he's a bigamist and he's no longer allowed to be a missionary in the Baptist church. That's where William Branham gets the name Missionary Baptist, because he was this. Well, Davis gets kicked out, and he goes to the Church of God, and he pretends he's a Pentecostal, and he becomes this. Well, they were going to create a institution called the Davis McPherson College. And I cannot confirm that it's Aimee Semple McPherson, but if you look at all of the connections, he's talking in this same statement. He says, Dr. Davis is president of the Davis McPherson College and one of the national directors of fundamentalists. Well, if you look at those connections, it strongly suggests that this was an Aimee Semple McPherson connection to Roy Davis, because we have, you know, McPherson's church is connected to Gerald Winrod. Winrod is in the Fundamentalist League. So this is a big, big deal.
Right. I mean, we know quite a number of the people in that circle were definitely preaching, teaching, attending, visiting Aimee Semple McPherson's church, the Angelus Temple. It seems like her church was a magnet for these people. And, you know, I'm not exactly sure why, you know, but for whatever reason, I mean, these people were in orbit around her church, and it stayed this way up until the late 40s and really even the early 50s, I think it's fair to say. You know, long after she had passed away. And it's bizarre, you know, you got these quasi-Nazi figures, neo-Nazi figures, Klan figures, all in orbit around there. And the people that actually produce the Christian identity movement are all just on the sidelines of Foursquare and the Angelus Temple. And again, here Roy Davis, who is one of the top leaders of the Klan, again, it seems like he has also a link to Aimee Semple McPherson. And it's bizarre stuff, John, and there's enough there to let us know there's something going on in that church. And again, I'm not even saying Aimee Semple McPherson was involved in it. I mean, this is a mega church, right? Who knows? You know, you got a church with 100 departments. Do you think Aimee Semple McPherson knows what's going on in every single department? I don't think so, right? But something is going on there that she may or may not even be aware of that is a breeding ground for this stuff. Yeah.
And I think we mentioned it in the podcast, or maybe I did in one of the little shorts, but McPherson had connections to the Ku Klux Klan. Whenever she had her big kidnapping fiasco, the Klan is the one who started backing her and started this very public campaign to save her. So, again, you can't openly say that she was connected directly to Roy Davis, because this was a very secret organization. There's no way to get under the covers of this and see who were all of the people and how were they connected. They keep all of that information secret, but we can see all of these indirect connections, and because of those indirect connections, you can kind of piece together the puzzle and see what groups were working together. It again, it strongly suggests, especially because Davis has the Davis McPherson College, it strongly suggests that there was a very, very close tie to Aimee Semple McPherson, or at minimum, Aimee Semple McPherson's movement, which, this whole thing seems to be connected to.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people in the movement who are part of this neo-Nazi, white supremacy, Christian identity stuff. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, they are there in the movement. And again, my opinion is, over time, they were gradually pushed out. I mean, I don't think Foursquare is this way at all anymore, but they, at one point, were a element within Foursquare certainly before the 1950s. It's something else. There's a place in Texas called Idabel too, John. Idabel.
Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
Anything you want to? Yeah, that might be worth sharing a little bit about the little town of Idabel.
Yeah, that's a big connection. There's all of these weird Texas connections that I keep stumbling across. And Idabel, Oklahoma. See, Roy Davis he had all of these churches from Texas into Oklahoma, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina. Well, one of the hot spots was in Idabel. And Idabel was just slightly northeast of Paris, Texas. I'm in contact with the Davis historians who say that the Davises, even though Roy Davis was born in a different city, the family unit kind of migrated into the Paris area, Paris/Detroit, Texas, in that range. Well, William Branham says that his mother was from Oklahoma, and she came down into Paris, Texas.
Then they moved on down to a place in Texas called Paris, Texas. Then from that, they went to Kentucky, moved out to Indiana, and then back to the West, and my father was a writer, and Mother and Dad were married then. So then they kind of settled down in Kentucky and moved then after my birth to Indiana, and there we have been since.
I found this years ago, and I was trying to make the connection between Branham's mother and father and Davis in the early years, but I never could quite make it, because at that time I did not realize that Davis had an Oklahoma church. But I've since learned, and I think since publishing the first, the Preacher Behind the White Hoods book, Davis had an Oklahoma church, and he's in the newspapers a few times in that church, getting a new car, being the pastor, going on evangelism trips. So he's from Idabel, Oklahoma, which strongly suggests that there was at least, at minimum, some influence there. I can't, again, make a direct connection. And you've also got John Osteen, who's from Paris, Texas. So you've got, all of these different connections that are at least, at minimum, in the same area.